This video is going to be on constructors for classes in C#. We've had a look at classes in a couple of videos now, and I want to take a few minutes to talk about the constructors because they're quite a bit different in F# compared to, for example, C#. So we're going to create a simple class in this video as well. We're going to name that my class, and we're going to put our parentheses as usual, and we're going to provide some parameters. Now, as you probably already know, what we used to put in here, so the parameters up here, is the default constructor or the main constructor of the class in F#. So whenever we initialize the class at a later stage, we would provide these input parameters, and that would then give them to the class so that we can initialize internal variables with those. So for example, we would internally in the class say something like member, and then since we're defining a member here and not using the let keyword, we need to have something dot and then the parameter name. So if we want the parameter to be named capitalized A, then we would have underscore, for example, dot capitalized A, like this, and we can do the same for the B variable. So we'll just capitalize B like that. Okay, so we could initialize a class just fine using this structure here, and the way we would do that is we would say let instance1 like that be a member of my class, and then in here we would need to provide the two parameters. So let's say 3 and 3.0 like that. Okay, so if we did that, and this is a repetition again, we could do a print fn statement with this, and here we would say that the instance has parameters, and then first we have an integer, and then we have a float like that, and then we would simply take instance1 like that, and then we have A there, and then instance1 dot B. Okay, so this should work. Let me save that and also execute so we can see that this works. Normally in C#, this is also the way you would define a class. In F#, however, you can define multiple constructors in a single instance of the class, and I'm going to show you how you do that now. So what you would use for this is the new keyword like that, and after this keyword you would provide the new parameters that you would give when you initialize the class. So let's say we want to create a constructor for the same class that only takes the A input variable as an input, like this. The way we would define that is in here we would type my class, so the class name, and then here we would provide whatever constructor we want. So A, and then we need to provide again the base or default constructor here with a value. So this 0 dot here is just a double, which I initialize to be 0, and I feed that into my B variable like this. Now, what this structure here, this new block that we put in, is going to allow us to do is to call the class with just one parameter, because here we have a constructor which only accepts one parameter. So we weren't able to do that before. We had to initialize it like this, otherwise we would get an error. And the instance here has parameters 3 and 3.0. So this is the execution we did for the first time when we initialized the class like this, and you can see that the parameters just make it through like we would expect. And now that we define this new constructor, we can create a new instance of this class as well. So let's do instance2, and then we can simply cut this out. Okay, let me actually jump ahead one step as well and try to create a third instance just to show you the problem in doing so. So let's say we tried to create my class without providing any parameters. You're going to see that we get an error here, and the reason for that is we don't yet at this stage have a constructor for this class which has 0 parameters. So F# doesn't know what to do. So let's just comment that out for a second, and we can use instance number 2 here instead. So this one works just fine, the initialization. Let's print out the equivalent statements, but for instance 2 here instead. Okay. And before I execute this, let me actually go ahead and create already the third constructor as well. So I want to make one now that doesn't require any input parameters. So I would just do new like this, and then my class, and in here I would simply default both of these parameters to 0 like that. Okay, and now you can see that the error message that we had here disappeared, because now we have a constructor that accepts 0 input parameters. So to wrap this up, let me just also print what the parameter values are for this third instance like that. Let's save the script and then execute this and see what we get. So just looking over what we did again, we had these member functions of the class in the beginning. If we wanted to, we might as well place those below these new initializations. It doesn't matter if they're above or below, it will work the same either way. If we did have any let initializations like we don't have here, then those need to go at the top though. So let always needs to come before member initializations. And we can see here now in the printouts that the first instance had parameters 3 and 3.0. That's what we have from the first constructor. The second one had parameters 3 and 0. That's what we get if we only initialize with one parameter, because we say that the first parameter is supposed to be the same as we provide in the constructor. So this a value here goes into the first parameter of the default constructor, and the second value of the default constructor we set to 0. So that's where we get 3, 0 here. And for the last one, we don't provide any inputs at all, so we say that we initialize it using 0 and 0, and that's why we see that for the last parameters. So that's how you work with constructors in F#.